Life can change in an instant. One minute I was driving along, the radio playing my favorite song. The next minute, everything went black. The screech of tires, the shattering of glass, it's all a blur now. When I woke up in the hospital, my world had been turned upside down. I had been in a terrible car accident. The doctors told me I had sustained a spinal cord injury. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I was young, with so many dreams and aspirations. Now, it felt like everything had been ripped away. The pain was unbearable, both physically and emotionally. I was angry, confused, and terrified of what the future held. How could I possibly live a normal life in a wheelchair? The days in the hospital blurred together in a haze of pain, medication, and despair. I couldn't escape the constant reminders of my new reality. I felt trapped in a broken body, my spirit slowly crumbling under the weight of my circumstances. All I wanted was to go back, to rewind time and prevent that fateful moment that had changed everything. Coming home from the hospital was both a relief and a challenge. I was glad to be out of the sterile environment, but I was also overwhelmed by the enormity of the task before me. My house, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now felt like an obstacle course. Stairs that I used to bound up and down were now insurmountable barriers. Simple tasks, like getting dressed or taking a shower, became monumental efforts. I was constantly reminded of my limitations. The inability to do simple things I had once taken for granted filled me with frustration and anger. I lashed out at my family and friends, pushing away the very people who were trying to help. I felt like a burden, a constant reminder of the accident that had shattered our lives. The emotional pain was even more debilitating than the physical pain. I was plagued by nightmares and flashbacks of the accident. I couldn't escape the feeling of being trapped, both physically and emotionally. The life I had envisioned for myself, a life filled with adventure, love, and accomplishment, seemed like a distant dream. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, a profound sense of isolation began to set in. My friends, initially supportive, slowly started to drift away. Their lives were moving on, while mine felt like it had come to a standstill. I was no longer invited to parties or outings. I withdrew into myself, avoiding social situations. I was terrified of being judged, of people seeing only my disability. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. The silence was deafening, broken only by my own negative thoughts. The fear of the future was a constant weight on my chest. Would I ever be able to find love? Would I ever be able to have a family of my own? Would I ever be able to find a job and support myself? These questions swirled in my mind, fueling my despair and hopelessness. The future seemed like a dark and uncertain path, one I wasn't sure I had the strength to navigate. I was raised in a devout Christian household. Faith and the teachings of the Bible had always been my compass, guiding me through life's challenges. But now, facing the biggest challenge of my life, I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew. Where was God in all of this? Why had He allowed this to happen to me? I desperately clung to my faith, seeking solace in prayer and scripture. But the words that had once brought me comfort now seemed hollow and empty. I couldn't reconcile my belief in a loving and merciful God with the pain and suffering I was experiencing. The dissonance between my faith and my reality created a deep sense of inner turmoil. I felt abandoned by God, left to fend for myself in a world that suddenly seemed cold and indifferent. My prayers felt like they were hitting the ceiling, unanswered and unheard. The doubt and confusion gnawed at my soul, threatening to extinguish the last embers of hope that flickered within me. Seeking support, finding silence. Desperate for guidance and support, I turned to my church community. I had always found solace and strength within the walls of our church, surrounded by fellow believers who offered love and encouragement. Surely they would understand my pain and offer the support I so desperately needed. But to my dismay, I was met with awkward silences and platitudes that did little to ease my suffering. People seemed uncomfortable with my pain, unsure of what to say or how to act. Some offered well-intentioned but hurtful comments, suggesting that my accident was a test of my faith or part of God's plan. I felt invisible. My pain brushed aside as if it were an inconvenience. The church, once my sanctuary, now felt like just another place where I didn't belong. The silence was deafening, amplifying my feelings of isolation and despair. I left the church that day feeling more alone than ever, my faith shaken to its core. Finding my voice. The feeling of being unheard, of my pain being dismissed, ignited a spark of anger within me. It was in that moment of anger that I realized I couldn't remain silent any longer. I had to find my voice, to advocate for myself and my needs. I had to take control of my own narrative and refuse to let my accident define me. I started small, confiding in a trusted friend about my struggles with depression and suicidal thoughts. Sharing my story, even with just one person, lifted a weight off my shoulders. It was a small step, but it gave me the courage to keep going. I began to explore therapy, finding a therapist who specialized in trauma and disability. Through therapy, I was able to process the emotional fallout from the accident, to work through my anger, guilt, and shame. I learned coping mechanisms to manage my anxiety and depression, to quiet the negative thoughts that swirled in my mind. To my surprise, she listened without judgment, offering words of encouragement and support. Small steps, big goals. Therapy also helped me to shift my focus from what I had lost to what I still had. I started setting small, achievable goals for myself. Things like learning how to cook a simple meal from my wheelchair, joining an online support group for people with spinal cord injuries, and taking up a new hobby like painting. Each small victory, no matter how insignificant it may have seemed, filled me with a sense of accomplishment. I was reclaiming my life, one step at a time. I was no longer defined by my disability, but by my resilience, my determination, and my unwavering spirit. I discovered a passion for adaptive sports, finding freedom and joy on the basketball court and in the swimming pool. Sports became my outlet, a way to push my physical limits and connect with others who understood my challenges. I learned that my disability didn't have to define my limitations. It could be a source of strength and inspiration. Reaching out. As I began to heal and rebuild my life, I realized that I wasn't alone in my struggles. There were countless others out there facing similar challenges, people who understood the pain, the isolation, and the fear. I felt a calling to use my experience to help others, to offer the support and encouragement that I had so desperately craved. I started volunteering at a local rehabilitation center, sharing my story and offering peer support to newly injured patients. It was incredibly rewarding to be able to offer hope and encouragement to those who were just beginning their own journeys of recovery. Their strength and resilience inspired me, reminding me of the incredible power of the human spirit. I became an advocate for disability rights, using my voice to raise awareness and challenge misconceptions about disability. I shared my story at schools, churches, and community events, hoping to educate others and create a more inclusive and accessible world for everyone. Embracing the journey. My journey has been far from easy. There have been days filled with pain, frustration, and despair. But there have also been days filled with joy, laughter, and a deep sense of purpose. I have learned that healing is not linear. It's a process, a journey with its own unique twists and turns. I have learned to embrace the bad days along with the good, to find beauty in the midst of pain, and to celebrate every victory, no matter how small. I have learned that true strength lies not in our ability to avoid suffering, but in our capacity to rise above it, to find meaning and purpose in the midst of our challenges. I have learned that my disability is not a curse, but a part of what makes me unique. It has shaped me, molded me, and given me a perspective that I wouldn't trade for the world. It has taught me the true meaning of resilience, compassion, and the unwavering power of the human spirit. A future filled with hope. I still have bad days, days when the pain is overwhelming, but now I have the tools and the support system to navigate those dark times. I have faith in a God who walks with me through the fire, who gives me strength when I am weak, and who reminds me that I am never alone. I don't know what the future holds, but I am no longer afraid. I am filled with a sense of hope, a belief that my life has meaning and purpose. I am determined to live a life filled with joy, love, and accomplishment.